Wait, don't start that engine. Her voice cut through the noise like a whip through the humid Lagos air. Every head turned. Drivers paused mid-curse, bus horn still blaring. There she was, a young, pregnant woman by the roadside, dust on her feet, sweat glistening on her forehead, one hand on her belly, the other pointing straight at the black Bentley that refused to move. The billionaire, Richard Okoro, froze with his hand on the key. The car's hood gaped open like a wounded beast. His guards stared at the woman in disbelief. "Madam, a big shift," one of them barked. "This is Ogre Richard's motor. We've called the best mechanics already." But the woman didn't flinch. Her voice stayed calm, almost eerie. "If he turns that key again, this car won't start ever again." For a second, silence. Even the traffic seemed to hold its breath. Hello family. Before I go on, let me quickly welcome you. If you're new here, thank you for joining our storytelling family. Please subscribe, share, and tell us where you're watching from. Your support keeps these stories alive and gives hope to women and children who've been forgotten. Alright, back to the story. Lagos sun burned like fire that afternoon. The highway shimmered, buses honked, hawkers weaved between cars shouting, "Pure water! Gala!" And right there, beside all that noise, stood Richard Okoro, one of the richest men in Nigeria, sweating beside a dead Bentley that no one could fix. He was used to control. Used to power. Polish, perfection. But today, power was nothing. The car had died, and pride had died with it. One mechanic after another had tried and failed. Each wiped their hands on dirty rags, shaking their heads. "Sir, NA engine control unit. This one pass me," they said. And Richard, impeccably dressed, gold watch catching the sun, could only sigh. Then that voice had come. Soft, firm, certain. From a woman who looked like life had kicked her too many times. "Who are you?" he asked finally. The woman walked closer, ignoring the whispers and laughter. Her gown was torn at the hem, her slippers were worn thin. But her eyes, those clay-brown eyes, held something steady. "My name is Chiamaka," she said. "Let me try." The guards looked at each other. One chuckled under his breath. "Ogre, this one no be mechanic. She go spoil and finish." Richard almost agreed, almost, but something in her tone made him pause. It wasn't arrogance. It was quiet confidence, the kind that comes from truth. He nodded. "All right. Let her." The crowd murmured. Phones came out. A billionaire letting a street woman touch his Bentley. It was madness, or a miracle waiting to happen. Chiamaka leaned over the open bonnet. The smell of metal and engine oil filled the air. Her fingers were quick and sure. She checked the battery clamp, tightened it with a coin she pulled from her pocket, scraped off rust from a ground strap, pressed a loose connector till it clicked. Her movements were so smooth it felt rehearsed. Richard watched, fascinated. "How did you learn all this?" he asked. She didn't answer. Her focus was unbroken. Then she stepped back, wiping sweat from her brow. "Try it now." Richard slid into the seat, half doubting. He turned the key. The engine growled once, coughed, and came alive. A clean, deep roar filled the highway. People gasped, some clapped, others shouted, "Ah, she fix 'em." The guards stared. The roadside mechanic who'd failed earlier removed his cap in shame. Richard blinked, shocked. "What did you just do?" Chiamaka smiled faintly. "I just listened. Engines always tell the truth." Before he could speak again, her knees buckled. He caught her as she fell forward, her hand clutching her belly. "Hey! Someone bring water," he shouted. Her voice was weak, barely a whisper now. "Please, don't let them find me." Richard frowned. "Who?" But her eyes fluttered closed. The crowd murmured. Phones kept recording. A pregnant stranger had just fixed a billionaire's car and fainted in his arms. Even the wind seemed to hush. Richard looked down at her pale face. Dust stuck to her cheeks. Her breathing was shallow, but steady. He looked at the running Bentley, purring like a content lion. Then at this fragile woman who had done what no man could. Something about her felt deeper than chance. He carried her to the car, ignoring the crowd. "Get the back seat ready," he ordered his driver. "She's coming with us." "Sir?" The guard hesitated. "You mean, this woman?" Richard's voice hardened. "Yes, this woman." As they drove off, the camera of a bystander caught the moment. The billionaire's car, fixed by a poor pregnant woman, gliding away from chaos. No one knew her story. No one knew the storm that followed. But one thing was clear, from that moment, their lives had collided for a reason. And the whisper that escaped her lips before she fainted kept echoing in his mind. "Please don't let them find me." The road to Ikoyi was quiet. Too quiet. Even the hum of the Bentley sounded heavy, like it carried secrets in its metal heart. In the back seat, Chiamaka slept with her head against the window. Her gown was torn, her feet bare, her hands resting on her swollen belly. Beside her sat Richard Okoro, eyes locked on the road ahead, but his mind far away. He couldn't stop hearing her words. "Please don't let them find me." Who were they? What was she running from? And how could someone who looked so broken fix a car everyone else had failed to understand? Hours later, in a soft, air-conditioned guest room of his mansion, Chiamaka stirred awake. The white sheets felt too clean, too smooth. The ceiling lights were warm. For the first time in months, she didn't hear the rumble of buses, the hiss of tires, or the shouts of hawkers. She blinked. Where was she? The door opened quietly. Richard stepped in, still dressed in his navy suit, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. He carried a tray, food, water, and clean clothes. "You're safe," he said softly. "Eat something." Chiamaka tried to sit up. "Why are you helping me?" He paused. "Because you helped me first." Then he left the tray and walked out, giving her silence instead of questions. She ate slowly, every bite tasting like memory, and memory was both kindness and pain. That night, as she lay staring at the ceiling, the memories came back like waves. Slow at first. Then fast, sharp, and painful. She remembered the small workshop in Enugu, her father's laughter, the smell of grease and roasted plantain from a nearby stall. She was only a little girl then, always by her father's side. His name was Obinwosu, a man whose hands could fix anything. Cars, radios, even broken hearts. He used to say, "Engines talk. Chiamaka. They whisper when they're sick. You just have to listen close." And she did. She listened better than anyone. By the time she turned 17, customers came asking for her, not her father. "She's the girl who can hear cars breathe," they said, laughing. Her father smiled with pride, but not everyone shared his joy. The men at the workshop began to frown. Some laughed behind her back. Others grew silent when she walked in. "She's showing us up," they whispered. "She's just a girl. This is shame." One of them was her father's younger brother, Chief Uche Nwosu, a man who smiled too quickly and envied too easily. He wanted the workshop, the land, the name, and he hated the way people loved Obi and his daughter. Jealousy, like a leak in an engine, started small but spread fast. One stormy night, the jealousy exploded. Chiamaka woke to the sound of shattering glass, her father shouting, her mother screaming. Men in masks stormed in. Gunshots. Smoke. Chaos. The world went red and loud. When it was over, her parents lay still. The smell of engine oil mixed with blood. She cried until no tears were left. When morning came, police lights flashed. Neighbors gathered. And Chief Uche arrived, face calm, voice cold. He pointed at her, his niece, trembling in the corner. "You planned this," he said. "You wanted their money." Her mouth opened, but no sound came. "Uncle, no. They were my parents." But he didn't listen. He sold the workshop within weeks, claiming debts. He pushed her out, gave her nothing but a small bag and shame. From that day, the streets became her home. She slept under bridges, learned to run from danger, to eat little and trust no one. Lagos was not kind to girls like her. The nights were long, and fear came in many voices. The footsteps behind her. The laughter of drunk men. The silence of people who saw her and looked away. Then one night, A group of men followed her near Oshodi Bridge. She ran. She fell. They caught her. When she woke the next morning, her gown was torn, her body bruised, and her voice gone. She never saw their faces. She only saw the sky turning pink with dawn. And she whispered through her cracked lips, "I will survive, even if no one believes me." Weeks turned to months. Her belly began to rise. People pointed, mocked, and passed her by. But she stayed silent. And that silence, her quiet strength, was what saved her. Because when the black Bentley stopped that day on the highway, she didn't just see a broken car. She heard it speaking. A sound she knew too well. A sound that said, "Help me." Back in the mansion, Richard stood outside her door, listening to her soft sobs. He didn't open it. He just stood there, hand against the wall, feeling something shift inside him. A kind of anger that wasn't about cars or engines, but about what the world had done to her. Later that night, lightning flashed outside. Richard looked through the window at the rain pouring down. Somewhere inside that house was a woman who had survived everything. And somehow, he felt the need to protect her, though he didn't yet understand why. And as thunder rolled over Lagos, Chiamaka whispered into the dark, "Papa, I still remember how engines talk. Maybe that's why I'm still alive." White right pointing backhand index. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Through these stories, we grow a community of strength, resilience, and hope. Leave a comment. Tell us where you're listening from. We love hearing your voices. The morning after the storm, the mansion smelled like fresh rain and coffee. Birds chirped in the garden. Guards paced the front gates. Everything looked calm, too calm. But calm is sometimes the silence before the next crack of thunder. Inside, Richard Okoro stood in his study, scrolling through his phone, half distracted, half worried. Every few minutes, his eyes drifted to the security feed showing the guest room. The room where Chiamaka slept. She looked peaceful, her breathing slow. But her peace was thin, fragile, like glass that had already been broken once before. Downstairs, one of his guards, Chiamaka, walked in. "Sir, about the car. The mechanic from yesterday, he came early. Says he found something strange under the chassis." Richard frowned. "What kind of strange?" Chiamaka hesitated. "Sir, a small black box. Looked like some kind of tracker. It had wires running near the fuse box." Richard froze. Tracker? On his Bentley? Who would dare? He followed Chiamaka outside. The Bentley gleamed in the sun, freshly washed, spotless, except for one thing. Near the back wheel, taped under the frame, was a burnt piece of plastic. The edges were blackened, melted. Whatever it was had been destroyed, by fire. And then he remembered. The moment Chiamaka had shouted on the highway, "Don't start that engine." The man in the black SUV. The leather wristband marked with the letter U. His jaw tightened. That was no coincidence. Richard crouched, brushing his fingers against the burnt spot. There was no mistaking it. Someone had planted a sabotage device. Something that could have made the car fail, or explode. He stood, face darkening. Get the footage from yesterday. The highway. Every camera between Lekki and Oja. I want to know who that man was. "Yes, sir," Chiamaka said, hurrying away. Inside the house, Chiamaka was awake now, sitting by the window, watching the morning light creep across the floor. She still couldn't believe where she was, a room bigger than any place she'd ever slept, white curtains swaying, the faint hum of air conditioning. But peace didn't sit easily in her chest. Her mind was still under that bridge, still hearing the ghosts of the past. She touched her belly gently. "You'll be safe," she whispered to the child. "I don't know how, but you will." A soft knock broke the silence. Richard stepped in. But his eyes, they looked tired. Too many questions. Too few answers. "Good morning," he said. "Morning, sir," she murmured. "Please, call me Richard." He hesitated, then pulled a small black object from his pocket, the remains of the burnt box. "Chiamaka, do you know what this is?" Her eyes widened. She gasped, covering her mouth. "Where did you find that?" "Under my car. This thing almost destroyed my engine." You warned me not to start it. You knew, didn't you? She nodded slowly. I've seen it before. My father once found something like that at his workshop. He said it's a trap for proud men, a small box that makes a good car fail. Richard's brows furrowed. A trap? Yes, she said quietly. He said people plant it when they want you to suffer losses. Sometimes for money. Sometimes for revenge. Silence filled the room. Richard looked out the window, his mind racing. He'd made enemies, rivals in business, political foes, jealous partners. But something about this felt personal. And the man yesterday, he said slowly, with the wristband, you burned into it. Do you know him? Chiamaka's voice trembled. Yes. That mark. I saw it the night my parents were killed. Richard turned sharply. You're sure? She nodded. Uncle Uche's men wore it. The Black Crows. I'll never forget. Her words hit him like a slap. Chief Uche Nwosu, the same name that had popped up in his company's investigation files last year. A rival investor. Ruthless. Dangerous. And her uncle. Richard exhaled deeply, rubbing his temples. So this wasn't chance. His car didn't just break down. Someone wanted it to. And somehow, that same someone had already destroyed Chiamaka's life. He looked at her, this fragile woman who had fallen from grace, who had fixed his car like she was fixing fate itself. And now he understood why she'd whispered, "Don't let them find me." "You're not safe here," he said firmly. "If they find out you helped me." She interrupted softly, "Sir, nowhere has ever been safe for me." Her eyes glistened. "But thank you for caring." Something in Richard's chest tightened. He'd seen power his whole life, money, control, fame. But he'd never seen this kind of strength. The kind that survives what should have killed it. Later that night, Richard sat in his study, staring at his phone. He had just received a call from his head of security. "Sir, the device we found, it was transmitting before it burnt. A signal led back to a warehouse in Apapa. And, sir, the name tied to the account is Uche Nwosu." Richard gripped the phone tighter. "Are you certain?" "Yes, sir. We're tracing it now." He ended the call and sat back, thinking. This wasn't just sabotage. This was war. Meanwhile, upstairs, Chiamaka couldn't sleep. Her body was tired, but her mind refused to rest. She walked to the window and looked out at the quiet streets of Ikoyi. Somewhere out there, her uncle was still free. Somewhere, danger still waited. But she wasn't running anymore. For the first time, she wasn't alone. In the darkness, Richard looked up from his desk. He could hear the faint sound of the generator humming outside. He thought of the woman sleeping just a few rooms away, the one who had walked out of the bridge's shadow and changed everything. And for reasons he didn't fully understand, he whispered into the silence. "I'll protect you, Chiamaka. No matter what it costs." Outside, thunder rolled again. The storm wasn't over. It was only the beginning. White right pointing backhand index. "Hey, I want you to please hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much." The night came heavy. Too quiet. Too still. Even the guards felt it, that strange air before something breaks. Inside the Ikoyi mansion, Richard Okoro sat by the living room window, staring at the streetlights outside. His phone buzzed with updates from security. The men guarding the gate had doubled. The cameras were active. The system was on lockdown. Still, something didn't feel right. He couldn't shake off the unease. He kept hearing Chiamaka's trembling words in his mind. "Please don't let them find me." Upstairs, Chiamaka couldn't sleep. The baby kicked gently inside her belly. She rubbed her stomach and whispered, "Sure. I know. You can feel it too." The house was quiet, but not peaceful. It was the kind of quiet Lagos knows just before thunder breaks loose. That pregnant silence that holds its breath before chaos. Then, from outside, a sudden bang. Not thunder. A gunshot. "Down! Down!" a guard shouted from the gate. Another gunshot followed. Then a scream. Then more gunfire, loud, sharp, echoing off marble walls. Richard jumped to his feet. "No!" He ran for the door, shouting, "Chiamaka! Report!" Static answered. Then, "Sir, intruders. Heavily armed. They've breached the west fence." He froze. It was happening. The black crows had found them. Upstairs, Chiamaka clutched her belly, eyes wide in panic. "God, not again," she whispered. Memories of her parents' death flashed like lightning. The shouting, the masked faces, the smell of gunpowder. Her hands trembled. Her body screamed run. But there was nowhere to go. The lights flickered. The mansion's power cut out. Only the red emergency bulbs glowed faintly along the corridor. Then she heard footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Coming closer. Richard stormed up the staircase, pistol in hand, his guards flanking him. "Where is she?" "In her room, sir." He burst through the door. Chiamaka stood frozen by the window. "They're here," she whispered. "I know." He stepped closer, his voice calm but sharp. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, you don't move." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. Then, crash! The main glass door downstairs shattered. Voices, rough, deep, cold. "Search everywhere. Bring me the girl." The hallways exploded in chaos. Guards fired back, shouting into radios. Gunfire cracked through the mansion like thunderclaps. Bullets hit the walls, glass rained down. Richard pulled Chiamaka behind a marble pillar. "Stay low," he hissed. She crouched, clutching her stomach, breathing hard. "Why are they after me, Richard? Why can't they just leave me alone?" His jaw tightened. "Because you're the one person who can expose them. Because you saw what they did." Then, through the smoke and noise, a deep, mocking voice echoed. "Richard Okoro." Richard froze. He knew that voice. From the shadows, a tall man stepped forward. Broad shoulders, scarred face, and a leather wristband burned with the letter U. "Ah, there you are," the man sneered. "And the girl. Perfect." Chiamaka gasped. It was him. The man from the night her parents died. The man who had haunted her dreams. "You," she screamed, voice cracking. "You killed them." The man's grin widened. "Your father was stubborn. He stood in our way. Chief Uche wanted him gone, so we cleared the road." Her knees buckled. Richard's rage flared. "Uche sent you." The man smirked. "He sends his regards. But tonight, we finish what we started." Bullets flew. Guards dropped. The mansion shook under the storm of gunfire. Richard grabbed Chiamaka's hand and shouted, "Come on." They ran through the corridor, ducking as bullets cracked behind them. He led her down a hidden staircase, toward the safe room beneath the mansion. Every step echoed with danger. Every breath was fear. They reached the steel door. Chiamaka typed the code. The lock hissed open. "Inside." Richard ordered. Chiamaka stumbled in, clutching her belly, crying softly. The guards sealed the door behind them just as more bullets hit the wall. For a moment, silence. Then, bang! A voice boomed through the intercom. "Richard Okoro. You think your money can hide you? That girl belongs to us." Chiamaka's voice trembled. "No, not again. Not again." Richard knelt beside her. "Look at me. You're safe. I promise you." She looked up at him, eyes full of fear and fire. "You can't promise that. No one ever could." Then, her face twisted in pain. She gasped. Her hands flew to her belly. "Richard, something's wrong." "What?" "The baby. It's coming." His eyes widened. Now, in the middle of a siege, he turned to the guards. "Get towels, water, anything." Outside, the attackers shouted. Inside, the safe room turned into a battlefield of a different kind, between life and death, fear and courage. Chiamaka screamed, gripping Richard's hand. Sweat rolled down her forehead. I can't do this." He leaned close, voice shaking but firm. "You can. You've survived worse. You can." Outside, the pounding grew louder. The men were trying to break through the steel door. Inside, the air was filled with her cries. Raw, powerful, defiant. Each contraction felt like a war. Each push was a fight to live. Then, as lightning flashed outside the small safe room window, a new sound pierced the noise. A baby's cry. Loud. Clear. Alive. The guards froze. The banging stopped. Even the attackers seemed to hesitate. Richard stared, tears in his eyes. It's a boy. Chiamaka collapsed against him, exhausted. Her voice barely a whisper. He's all I have. Richard held her hand. No. He's all we have now. Outside, footsteps retreated. The black crows had failed. But Richard knew this wasn't over. As he held the newborn close, he looked at Chiamaka. This woman who had crawled out of pain, who had fixed his car, and now, in the middle of chaos, brought new life into the world. He whispered, "They came to destroy us. But look, you gave life instead." And in that moment, under the dim red light of the safe room, the sound of the baby's cry drowned out the echoes of war. The night bled into morning. The mansion was silent again. No gunfire, no shouting, no chaos. Only the faint sound of a baby breathing. And the soft hum of the generator outside. In the safe room, Richard Okoro sat on the floor, his shirt stained with sweat and tears, his arms cradling a newborn child. Beside him, Chiamaka slept, weak but alive, her hand resting near the baby's tiny foot. The guards stood outside, bruised, blooded, but victorious. The black crows were gone, driven off, scattered like shadows at dawn. For the first time in a long time, peace felt real. Fragile, but real. When Chiamaka opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was light. Golden light spilling through the window, touching the baby's face. She smiled weakly. "He's beautiful," she whispered. Richard nodded. "You both are." Then her smile faded a little. "They won't stop, Richard. Chifuche, he'll come again." He looked at her, and there was no fear in his eyes, only fire. "Then this time, we'll be ready. And he won't walk away free." That afternoon, the security team delivered the footage from the night before. Richard watched the video in his study, frames showing the attackers' faces, their weapons, their car plates. And there it was. The proof. Chifuche Nwosu himself, caught on camera near the Apapa warehouse, issuing orders, giving money, and laughing. Laughing as he talked about the girl who refused to die. Richard slammed his fist on the desk. That's enough. He called his lawyer, his media team, his police contacts. Within hours, the story hit the news. Businessman linked to attempted murder of billionaire and pregnant woman. By evening, every screen in Lagos had Uche's face on it. And for the first time, the hunter became the hunted. Police raided the warehouse that night. They found weapons, fake passports, and documents tying Chief Uche to several crimes. Fraud, extortion, murder. He tried to flee, but the law caught up with him in Port Harcourt, trying to escape by boat. The same hands that once pulled triggers now reached up for mercy. When Richard got the call, he didn't smile. He just looked at Chiamaka, sitting on the sofa, holding her baby, and said quietly, "It's over." She didn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks, slow and silent. Days passed. The mansion, once filled with tension, began to breathe again. Guards smiled more. Laughter returned. Even the flowers outside seemed to bloom brighter. Chiamaka moved around slowly, stronger each day. Sometimes she sat by the garden, holding her son, listening to the rustle of trees and the hum of cars passing by. Richard often joined her, coffee in hand, watching quietly. He didn't know what to call what he felt. It wasn't just gratitude. It was something deeper. Something sacred. "What will you name him?" he asked one morning. She smiled. "Obinna," she said softly. "It means father's heart. For my papa, and for every man who ever protected me when the world didn't." Richard nodded slowly. "Then Obinna it is." Weeks turned into months. The world moved on. The headlines faded. But for Richard and Chiamaka, life was just beginning. She started learning again, reading, studying, rebuilding the pieces of her dream. And sometimes, when she walked into Richard's garage, she'd pause by the Bentley she once fixed. The hood still bore a small scratch from that day. She'd touch it gently and whisper, "You brought me here." Richard heard her once and chuckled. "You think the car planned all this?" She smiled. "Maybe not. But sometimes, even broken things have purpose." He didn't argue. Because she was right. One evening, as the sun melted over Lagos Lagoon, Richard stood by the balcony with her. The baby slept peacefully inside. Below them, the city glowed, cars honking, life moving, the sound of hustle never resting. He turned to her and said quietly, "You changed everything, Chiamaka." She looked at him. "No. You listened." They both laughed softly, the kind of laugh that feels like healing. And so, the story that began with a broken car ended with a mended life. The poor pregnant woman who once lived under a bridge now stood under golden light, her child safe, her heart free. The billionaire who thought he had everything learned what true wealth meant: kindness, courage, and the power of standing up for someone else's story. Sometimes, fate doesn't knock. It breaks down in the middle of the highway and waits for someone brave enough to listen.